In this video, I want to show you that oil painting can be simple if you use simple techniques, and in 1 hour I'm gonna try to do this painting, so here it is. Alright, so let's start really simply and let's start sketching the outline to the eye. And for that, well, of course you can use graphite and just draw your eye with graphite. So we just draw the outline, try to get something that approaches. So first with graphite in case I need to erase. So what I'm trying to focus on are the shadow shapes mostly, and not just the I'm not just trying to draw the features, I'm trying to draw the spacing between the features, the shadows. So here, as soon as I'm clear with my lines and I know where everything should be, I'm gonna try to erase most of it. It's not gonna fully be erased, don't worry. Just get something very, very clean. And next, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trace with a colored pencil. This way I know that it will not be completely washed away by the paint and the solvents and the oils. So right there, we are done with phase 1, and you see we're keeping it simple. Just a simple graphite drawing, just simply tracing over the lines with a little black colored pencil, and that's all. We can move on to the painting, and we're gonna mix directly. We're not gonna talk about layering. We're not gonna talk about all the advanced knowledge. So there we are with the colors. We have something very simple. We're gonna need titanium white. We're gonna need yellow ochre. We're gonna need transparent iron oxide, quinacridone rose or alizarin crimson. We'll need some burnt umber for the shadows mostly. Very useful brown. For the blue of the eye, we're gonna need some ultramarine blue, just a touch. And finally, I'm gonna use some ivory black. See, we're keeping it simple for the moment. The palette's not too crowded. What we want to do is we want to start with 3 main values: the lightest value, then a sort of a medium value, and sort of an intermediate value in between. In my case, the skin tones are pretty fair, and pretty pink. So this would be something like that. And next, we want a value for the shadows. In our case, they're pretty warm, so I'm going to add a touch of yellow ochre to the shadows. And yeah, there you go. We have spent, what, like 3 minutes mixing those 3 colors, and we're keeping it as simple as we can right there. This is the idea. We're going to adjust those colors on the spot using our main pigments right there. So what we want is, when we think about the highlights, we're going to pick from this pool, but you know, maybe we'll need to be a little bit more pink. So what I'll do is I'll adjust on the fly with a little bit more of my pink. Maybe this one will need to be a little bit more orange, so I'll adjust on the fly by picking it up like that. And on the sides, I'll always adjust, and you'll see that very soon we'll have an array of very varied colors from all different ranges. And I'm going to adjust with some of my black here. And we're going to actually start with the black. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint the pupil first, and we're going to paint it as a solid, deep black circle in the center of the iris. So we start with the pupil. We paint the pupil as a solid, deep black circle in the center of the iris, and we start with black because it's the easiest way to keep all the values together. Basically, all the other colors are going to be compared to this black, which is going to be called our key for this painting. It will help us define the form because the dark colors represent the shadows, and by painting them first, we establish a sort of a structure and the overall form of the eye and the values will all be connected to the darkest dark. It's a pretty common trick to start with the darkest dark. Next, we move on with the iris. We first fill in with the base color with a blue here in this case, and we then add the details, the radial lines emanating from the pupil to the edge of the iris. I only use a fine brush to do that, and I try to vary the thickness, the pressure, but to keep it simple, as you can see, I've only used a single brush. By varying the thickness, the colors, I can get a lot of different effects. I also paint the highlights. I paint the lighter areas to indicate some light reflections. For the moment, I keep it just a white canvas, but later on I'll add just an accent of white, but mostly in the end because I don't want the white to be polluted too early. And then for the rest, I'm going to just use a soft brush to blend the transition to retain some of this sharp details for the realism and still have a nicely blended painting. Next, we are going to move on to the white of the eye, the sclera. The white part of the eye is rarely pure white in reality. We need some type of gray, and we need to follow the spherical shape of the eye. We mix white with a hint of gray, with a hint of blue, or with a hint of actually some of this skin tones color. A little bit of skin tones and a little bit of black mixed with white is going to give us a gray that's neither cool or warm. That's kind of in the middle. That's what we want. Then we want to add the subtle shadows near the edges and the corners to give the eye a sort of a rounded appearance and also ground the eye in the socket, the eye socket. We want to make sure that it feels that it's connected to the other parts. And we want to finally use a soft brush or a blending tool to smooth the transition between the lights and the shadows and really focus on this spherical shape, thinking very strongly about the direction, the orientation of the light source so that we can follow the spherical shape of the eye and paint it as a sphere. Next, we're going to add some depth. We're going to do the eyelids, the surrounding skin around the eyes, and we're going to be using a mix of the skin tones that we've prepared to build the layers on the eyelids and the surrounding area. For the shadows and the highlights, we add the shadows where the eyelid folds and the highlights on the protruding areas. So we think again about where the light source is coming from, and we think of this as a three-dimensional object. So the highlights have to peak from the direction of the direction where the light source is located. I'm going to keep this part and make it lighter than the rest, because this is where the eyelid catches the light. I'm thinking of it as a sort of a three-dimensional form, and the light is facing here. I'm trying to follow this form. See, I'm melting it with the eyelashes, and I'm not trying to go for too much detail right now. I'll see if I want more. Sometimes it can feel awkward if you make it too much. So the fold of the eyelid here, creating a very dark fold here, creating a sort of crevice. And then we want to just blend the colors to mimic the soft texture of the skin, and we also want to include some makeup, some hue variations. For the eyelashes, we want to use a fine detail brush, but I don't want to paint individual eyelashes too early because I find it kind of awkward sometimes, so I leave it for the details in the end. What I want is more to follow the natural curve of the eye, and I go for pure black, and I go for the kind of the eyeliner and really push the black around to kind of anchor the design of this eye in the composition. And then later on, if I need it, I'll bring back some of the eyelashes individually with a thin brush. So we're keeping things relatively thin here. And again, we're keeping things extremely simple. We haven't used any medium. We are not talking about glazing. We're not talking about anything like that. Just use the colors that feel good when they seem to be appropriate. Try to trust our intuition. And the thing is, once you learn how to trust your eye, the act of making art, painting and making art in general, becomes easier all of a sudden. So there you go. I'm pretty much done here with the first phase of the painting, but it still looks pretty rudimentary. It's not soft enough. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it all together. I'm going to try to soften those hard edges, and I'm going to try to bring more variety in the transitions. So yeah, that's all, and still pretty simple. So from this point out, we really want to focus on making things smoother. So we want to use our brush technique. We want to use the brush control, the pressure, the smoothness of the brush to get the best smoothness in one layer, because we're keeping it simple. So we want to use the right tools. We want to use soft, good quality brushes for blending, such as filberts. Some flats, synthetic flat, can be pretty soft, or you can use a mop brush or a fan brush, but I don't really recommend it for something this small. You can also use an old brush that can actually blend very smoothly. We work very thinly with very little mediums, so the paint is going to naturally blend pretty well. It's not going to slide around, and you can actually get a lot of the mixing directly done on the canvas. So what we want to do is we want to blend while the paint is wet. Again, we're taking things and making them simple. So we don't think about blending in an upcoming layer, we blend right now. So we use soft strokes and we use gentle overlapping strokes to mix adjacent colors. We blend with a soft brush and we try to follow the form. We try to follow the orientation, the direction of the form. We try to blend across the form to get something even smoother. The key is also to master the control over the edges. We want to use a crisp line when it's needed for hard edges. And we also want to use the soft edges for blending into the backgrounds to create those subtle shifts. And for that, you want to use a clean brush to lightly drag one color into the other. And the key for blending is to control the paint consistency. We have a layer that's relatively thin, and it's easier to blend with opaque paint for smooth blending. If your paint is slightly thinned, it reduces the drag and allows the colors to merge almost effortlessly and create those really seamless transitions. And one super important thing that I say very often is to load the brush. You want to avoid loading your brush with too much paint, but you also want to avoid loading your brush with not enough paint and create something completely dry that's going to suck all the vitality out of your transitions. What you want to do is you want to mix with an intermediate color. So whenever you have a dark and a light shade and you want to make a transitions between the two, you want to blend those two. What you want is you want to have a color in the middle to kind of create this natural transition. So what you want to do is you want to mix an intermediate color on your palette, pick up some of this color with your brush, and then use this brush full of this intermediate color to blend the transition between the dark and the light. And you want to do that when it's wet, of course. Directly you want to blend the colors on the canvas, and you apply them side by side and you mix them with a brush where they meet with a brush that has the intermediate color. You can also blend with a dry brush, of course, but very often the dry brush is going to be removing some of the paint from your canvas, which can create an effect that's kind of disappointing. You want to think about cleaning your brush also regularly. I like to not use a little dip of solvent to dip my brush in, but I just like to drag it on a piece of rag or a piece of paper towel on the side of my palette so that I can get rid of the old colors and start fresh. Generally it's enough. Sometimes, every once in a while, my brushes need a more thorough cleanup, so I'll do that. And when it's the case, I'll do that with odorless mineral spirits. And really the key for blending is patience. You want to blend gradually, don't rush really. And right there, we're doing this in 1 hour, one layer with only very simple techniques to show you that it's possible to get a very satisfactory result in an hour of time with simple techniques. But you can also remember that you can improve over time, and that sometimes you can let it dry, come back the next day and correct all the things that need to be corrected and get something even better. So yeah, always remember that you're always one layer away from improving your paintings. All right, so there you go. This is the end of the 1 hour mark for us, and I'm gonna stop here because the goal was just to show to you that it's actually achievable. Then you can get great results with very simple techniques in almost no time. Just it's more simple than it looks. That's what I wanted to show. And that's the result for us today. We're gonna keep it like that, but feel free to do whatever you want and push the paintings as far as you want. Alright, that's gonna be it for this video, my friends. If you want to see another one, you can click on this one. I'll see you there, and as always, joy and inspiration to you. Bye.